Okay, so picture this. You're digging around in an archive, and you stumble upon a dusty old box of government memos from the late 1970s. Your first thought is probably, boring, right? Well, what if I told you that hidden inside these typed, stapled, and probably coffee-stained pages is this incredible story of struggle, of persistence, and of the invisible work that actually helped launch the space shuttle? Just take a look at this. It's a draft of some meeting minutes from 1978. See all those handwritten edits? The words that are crossed out, the little notes scribbled in the margins? This is so much more than just some dry text. This is a living document. It's practically a battlefield of ideas. And it shows you that behind every single polished report, there's this messy, human process of arguing and compromising.
And that really brings us to the big question here. I mean, we all love those stories of the lone genius having a eureka moment. But is that really how huge, complex projects get off the ground? Or does the real progress, the nitty-gritty work, happen right here, in the fine print of committee meetings and bureaucratic memos?
So our story kicks off with this group, the Range Commanders Council, or RCC. Now, their job was absolutely monumental. The U.S. had all these massive, independent military test ranges scattered across the country, sprawling places for testing rockets and all kinds of new tech. The RCC's whole mission was to get them all to work together, to standardize literally everything, a truly colossal task. And buried deep inside the RCC, we find the real heroes of our story, a small team called the Documentation Group. Yeah, the name sounds kind of dull, I'll give you that. But their mission was anything but. They were the translators, the ones setting the standards. Their job was to create a common language, a shared rulebook that would let all these different ranges finally collaborate without a hitch. And this is where things get really interesting and really personal. See that memo on the right? It's from January 23, 1978, and it appoints a Mr. Donald Marsh to the group. Now look at the one on the left. Just 3 weeks later, the group's chairman, Gilbert Regnier, sends a letter saying he's going in for surgery and won't be at the next meeting. Just like that, a leadership vacuum opens up right as the new guy's walking in the door. So with the chairman out, the newly appointed vice chairman, Don Marsh, is suddenly thrown into the deep end. He has to step up, take the reins, and lead this committee through some of its most critical work. He becomes our accidental protagonist, the guy who had to fill some very big shoes, very, very quickly. So, what exactly was this huge task they were up against? What was on their to-do list that was so important for the future of spaceflight? Well, at their big meeting in March of '78, they laid out 3 key goals. First, revise the glossary, basically create a universal dictionary so everyone was using the same words for the same things. Second, standardized how all the data was labeled. And third, and this is the big one, create standards for the electronic transmission of data. They were literally trying to build the digital foundation for the entire U.S. rocket and missile testing program. And this quote right here from one of their own proposals shows you exactly why their work was so unbelievably critical. They knew the brand new space shuttle program was on the horizon, and they got it. They understood that the old way of doing things, manually processing all that data, just wasn't going to fly. The standards they were creating were absolutely essential for America's future in space. But here's the thing. Just because the stakes were sky high didn't mean the work was glamorous. Oh no, far from it. The reality was a slow, bureaucratic grind that was constantly being interrupted by very real, very human problems.
You see this theme pop up again and again in these memos. The excessive turnover of people. Folks were constantly being reassigned or just leaving. Which raises a pretty big question, right? How are you supposed to make progress on a project that takes years when your team is basically a revolving door? It was a constant headache.
And then there's just life. This memo from September '78 explains that progress on their super important glossary is delayed. And why? Because the man in charge, Don Marsh himself, got flooded out by a gully washer. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's this perfect humanizing detail. Even work that's crucial for the space age can get put on hold because of some bad weather. This timeline for just one task, revising the glossary, really shows you the sheer scale of the grind they were in. It was approved in January of '78, but the final submission wasn't even scheduled until the end of 1979. That's a 2-year project just to agree on what words mean. And you see in other memos that these deadlines were already slipping. Progress here was measured in months and years, not days and weeks. But through all of it, our guy Don Marsh kept at it. You can actually track his journey just by looking at how he signs the documents. In early 1978, he's the vice chairman. A year later, he's signing off as the acting chairman, fully in charge, steering the group through every single delay and frustration. The man stepped up. And the torch was officially passed in October of '78. The original chairman, Gilbert Regnier, formally resigned to take a new job. So Don Marsh's temporary emergency role, it was now the official reality. The responsibility was all his. As time marched on, the original members, the old-timers, who'd been fighting these bureaucratic battles for years, they started to move on. Their departures really marked the end of an era, but they also gave everyone a moment to kind of step back and reflect on what they'd managed to build together. And that brings us to one of the most powerful documents in this entire file. It's a farewell letter from a long-serving member named Burke O'Kelly. And it's not some formal report, it's a personal reflection, and it just perfectly captures the spirit of this little group. He writes, "Through the years, with lean budgets, changes in membership, lack of understanding by our bosses at times, the DG has persisted in its efforts." Just think about that for a second. He's summing up years of frustration, but the most important word in that whole sentence is persisted. They just kept going no matter what was thrown at them. And here it is. This is their legacy. O'Kelly knew their work wasn't the final product. He says what they did was a stepping stone to a future system that would be handled electronically. They weren't just solving the problems of their day. They were literally laying the foundation for tomorrow's breakthroughs. They were building the future one memo at a time. And with that foundation solidly laid, the story of our accidental chairman comes to an end. In March 1979, after a full year of leading the charge, a new chairman and vice chairman are finally elected. And in his last memo about it, Don Marsh signs off simply as former vice chairman. His duty was done. So what do all these dusty old memos really tell us in the end? They show us that real, world-changing progress often doesn't look like a lightning bolt of genius. It looks like this. It looks like ordinary people sitting in a committee room, dealing with gully washers and people quitting, while patiently, persistently doing the hard, invisible work that makes the next giant leap even possible. Which, it leaves you with the final thought. We've seen the stepping stones they laid for the space shuttle, for the whole digital age. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What invisible work, what unseen committees are out there right now laying the groundwork for our world?